Good morning once again, everyone, and welcome to our first session, Music Across Borders, Cultural Diplomacy Amid Geopolitical Challenges. We felt like putting this subject on the table first, not only because of the precarious state of the world at the moment, but also because of our federation's home address, Geneva. Like countless other international organizations, the World Federation is based in this city in Switzerland, the city of diplomacy, city of the United Nations in Europe, and the city of peace. Now, in this session, we don't want to look so much at the challenges, at the crises, but rather at what we can do as artists, as music competitions, as music festivals. What is the power of music? And what can music do in crossing divides and bringing people together? The great pianist Alfred Brendel, who passed away last week, once said, "The true beauty of music lies in its ability to unite people from all walks of life. And nothing could be more fitting than this as a theme for this session." So we will speak about a number of examples, about projects, tours, cultural exchanges, festival projects in Europe, in Asia, in Russia, in Korea, and other countries. But I would first like to introduce our keynote speaker, Michael Häfliger. As we just heard, this year, China and Switzerland celebrate 75 years of diplomatic relation. And so we thought it very appropriate to invite Michael Häfliger to this conference, the chief executive of one of the world's best-known music festivals, the Lucerne Festival. Michael is originally a violinist, and in the past he has also been on the jury of various music competitions. But today, let's first find out a little bit more about the Lucerne Festival, and then about some of the extraordinary projects that this festival has presented in the past 20 years. Please welcome with me, Michael Häfliger.
Thank you very much, Florian. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, first, a small clip about the Lucerne Festival.
Lucerne Festival. Die Weltstars der klassischen Musik im Herzen der Schweiz. Seien Sie dabei.
It's a great pleasure for me to be here, to have come all the way to Harbin. I've heard a lot about Harbin and its beautiful ice festival. I've always dreamed about coming here once. Unfortunately, now it is summer, it's not winter, but maybe the next time in the winter. But thank you for the invitation. Also, thank you for the invitation to the World Federation of International Music Competitions. We, the Lucerne Festival, are not a competition, but we compete in a very challenging and international, dynamic cultural world. We do have two outstanding awards that we give each year. One is the UBS Young Artist Award, and the second one is the UBS Prix Jeune Soliste. The Artist Award was won by artists such as Sol Gabetta and Patricia Kopaczinska, for instance. It is a 75,000 prize, plus a debut with the Vienna Philharmonic in Lucerne every 2 years. What more could a young artist wish for? And international careers have been established. You see here the beautiful building, the Cultural Congress Center in Lucerne, settled at yeah, yeah. Thank you. Settled at Lake Lucerne, one of the most beautiful lakes in the whole world, if I may say, in the middle of Switzerland, and a great experience and a great setup for one of the best symphonic music festivals in the world. We have 3 worlds. I'm just going to give you a brief view over the festival before I speak about our diplomatic cultural projects. We have 3 worlds. One is symphony. We do invite the best orchestras from all over the world every year, from Germany, the Berlin Philharmonic, from Austria, the Vienna Philharmonic, from Netherlands, the Concertgebouw Orchestra. We invite the Paris Philharmonic. We invite the best American orchestras and many more. So in 5 weeks, you can witness the very best, the top that symphonic music has to give. A fascinating journey each year. It's the championship of symphonic music making. We have our contemporary world, which consists of the contemporary orchestra that performs works from the 20th and 21st century. Over the past 25 years, we have committed to 420 new commissions that have been premiered at the Lucerne Festival. So the Lucerne Festival is very much at the border, at the cutting edge of contemporary music, there where music is invented anew, innovated, created. We invite every year in our academy 120 young musicians from all over the world. Many also come from China, from the US, from Europe, of course, to dedicate themselves to contemporary music. And we have created this wonderful project together with Pierre Boulez in 2003. Music for Future is our world committed to young audiences, to schools. We do educative projects, we do community work, we bring youth orchestras to the Lucerne Festival, and also many debut concerts. So these are the 3 pillars of the festival, and our 2 orchestras, which we have created over the past 25 years. The Lucerne Festival Orchestra we have created with Claudio Abbado in 2003, is now being led by Ricardo Chailly, and also the Lucerne Festival Contemporary Orchestra, a truly outstanding orchestra and ensemble for contemporary music. So you see here our festivals, our Spring Fest in April, our Piano Fest in May, June, then our big summer festival, which has all the best orchestras, our contemporary orchestra, international guest orchestras, and star soloist. 5 weeks is the real centerpiece of the Lucerne Festival. And then at the end of the year, our fall festival, Forward, which is a purely contemporary music festival. Some of the figures for festivals: 44 festival days, 95,000 concert going, 175 events, 92% self-financed. What does that mean? We are actually only 8% financed through the city and the canton of Lucerne, which means that most of our income comes from ticket sales, from sponsorships, foundations, donors, and friend circles. We create altogether 45 to 50 million value to the region of Lucerne. That also means we create new employees, we create income for the restaurants, gastronomy, and our overall budget is between 18 and 90 million, with 166,000 followers on 5 social media channels and 1,300 media articles a year. I thought this would be important for you to know before I explain a little bit the projects we have done. outside of the Lucerne Festival. And here's an overview of our visitors. 82 come from Switzerland, 6.5 today from Germany, 2% from the US, 1.5 from France, and 8% from other countries. We are building again on the Chinese audience. Unfortunately, after COVID, it was not easy to recover the Chinese audiences for obvious reasons, but we are very confident to win back more and more as the years come. And for us also, for the base of the Lucerne Festival, it's very good to know that 82% come from Switzerland, as they also have the buying power for the Swiss franc, which probably most of you know is not a cheap currency. So, ladies and gentlemen, but let's think a little bit about what do we do outside of Lucerne. One can easily say that our main goal is to really sustain our residency in Lucerne. We are working for Lucerne. The value creation, the artistic creation is very, very much connected to Lucerne. On the other hand, as we thought, even back in 2003, one should go abroad. One should show the world what culture in Lucerne is all about, which wonderful projects we have created, and even more so, to engage with the communities, with the regions. Let them experience what we do in Lucerne. Let it be brought over, but let it also be experienced in a different way, with different emotions, with different sensitivity, which art is all about. Art is not about business, about money, about values, creation, making more, achieving more. Art is about touching hearts and souls, and there are hearts and soul in each country of this world. We feel in Lucerne, the more we can reach out, the more we can touch, the better we can communicate what the arts are all about. Claudio Abbado, who created with us the Lucerne Festival Orchestra, which today is one of the most fascinating orchestras in the world, it works together 3 weeks a year, but it creates incredible, unbelievable artistic experience. Claudio was the founder. With him, we did first major tour projects, which we hadn't done. But Claudio was at home in the world. Whatever he did not only want to do where his base was, but he wanted to go to Tokyo, to the US, to China, of which he was particularly fond of. And he wanted to reach out. He wanted to tell people what his mission is. And he wanted to hear back how they reacted. We had a first project in Suntory Hall in Tokyo, which is unforgettable. 1 week in Suntory Hall with the Lucerne Festival Orchestra, and Claudio Abbado, among the many pieces performed, was also the Mahler Sixth Symphony and the Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto with Maestro Claudio Polini. People were lined up at the hotel after the performances, waiting for Claudio and Maurizio to come back, waiting for the musicians and embracing them. We had created incredible artistic moments. We have ignited the hearts of many people in Japan at that time. And when we went to Beijing in 2009 with Lucerne Festival Orchestra and Claudio Abbado, it was even more exciting. It was a different experience. Beijing had been waiting for this to happen. They had been really, really calling for it. Claudio Abbado was a god, one could say, already before we arrived, and his performance with the Lucerne Festival Orchestra was expected in the highest dimension. I remember when Claudio walked into the Beijing concert hall at NCPA, people just got up and screamed. You may think, oh, well, this is natural for a country where there are not that many performances, but Claudio was overtaken from this experience. And you see here a poster at the NCPA Cultural Center This residency of Claudio Abbado and the Lucerne Festival Orchestra will not be forgotten ever, I believe. And for us in Lucerne, it was also an incredible experience because we could see how a Lucerne project founded and created in Lucerne at the Lake of Lucerne ignited a completely different community in a different way with different reactions. And people were uniting. They were not being divided. They felt immediately at home with what we had to say. We did not speak Chinese. We did not speak Japanese. But we spoke the universal language of music. And that made everybody feel totally at home and comfortable. Here you see a picture from the press conference. We worked together with the Kachimoto Artists Management there, who presented us together with NCPA. And we also worked with them in Tokyo before. And it was a big event, which I personally will never forget in my life. Here also a picture, Claudio Abbado conducting Mahler's First Symphony, the Titan, in the NCPA concert hall. A rare and really, truly excellent performance. Let me talk a little bit about our project Arc Nova. One of the, for me, really, really outstanding project, which was never planned as much as the Lucerne Festival Orchestra was part of a certain strategy we had built up. Although Claudio Abbado came in at a late stage, we had never thought that the Lucerne Festival would be involved with a project called Arc Nova. And it happened to be the first inflatable concert hall in the world and movable. That sounds like, well, good to think about. But, and here comes the true story and the real story and the fascinating story and why the arts are so important and sometimes important even in moments that we cannot imagine to happen, that we cannot foresee to happen. You might all remember in 2011 in March, the terrible earthquake, tsunami, and then also the nuclear disaster taking place in Japan. I remember it very well. I saw the pictures. I had so many friends in that region and in Japan overall. We had done so many projects there. I called my friend Masa Kachimoto and said, what can we do? And he said, I don't know. Let me think. And I called my friend, the Japanese architect, Arata Isozaki. Can we come and see you? And in June 2011, we went to see Arata Isozaki with Masa Kachimoto, and we told him about the idea, maybe doing some kind of a flexible concert hall. Only 1 month later, he came forward with the idea of asking his friend Anish Kapoor to come in with the design, as Anish had done similar projects within built buildings before. And I'm going to cut the long story short. It happened, and in 2013, we first presented Arc Nova in Matsushima in the Tohoku region, and no less artists than Gustavo Dudamel and Ryoichi Sakamoto were conducting a Tohoku youth orchestra that we had especially built together for this project. That is here, you see on the picture what Arc Nova looks like. And here the story again. It was inaugurated in 2013 in Matsushima. Then it went to Sendai in 2014, 2015 in Fukushima. In 2017, we were actually in Tokyo, Roppongi. And this coming summer, from September 4th to 14th, we will be for the first time at the Lucerne Festival. And we will present it together with the Museum of Transport in Lucerne, a great partner. And also in 2015, the project received the Classical Next Innovation award. Through a catastrophe, we achieved one of the most outstanding art projects in the world. It is as strong in the art, in the design, in architecture, and it is also a fascinating space to make music, to perform, to talk, to give master classes. And when you look at the programs we have designed for Art Nova, it was never only a classical music festival. It was maybe jazz in the morning, maybe an hour of classical music, a string quartet, a small orchestra, a recital, a pop singer. It was everything under one roof. The building of Art Nova united different artistic styles, different spheres from the arts, and it also proved that this is possible. We, for instance, in the classical music field, we are a world of our own, and we have to solely focus on this world. I believe that's wrong. As much as I care for classical music and contemporary music, having presented 420 contemporary world premieres in the past 25 years, I feel let's move more together. Let's lose the boundaries. As much as in the world, let's come together. Let's be lovers of art. Let's be appreciative for our different emotions, excitement, and thinking. And we can turn this world into a fabulous place, day by day, hour by hour, and minute by minute. I experienced it myself in Lucerne for many years, and I'm looking forward to be experiencing it more in the upcoming years. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much, Michael. We're going to move forward, as you said, but I would like to first, in this session, look back a little bit in the history of the music competitions. Before I forget, Mark Kauflin, who was supposed to be with us for the first time in this conference because of a medical emergency, had to return to Australia, and he's not with us anymore now. So it will be just the four of us in this session. Let's move back in the history of music competitions. One of the earliest competitions, as you know, was the Geneva competition, founded in 1939 by Henri Gagnepin and Frederick Liebstöckel, the same people who also founded our federation. In 1957, the federation was founded. It was still Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. And the Soviet government decided to do something to promote Soviet culture around the world. The government asked the best musicians to come together from all over the Soviet Union and compete with the world. Thus, the first Tchaikovsky competition happened in 1958. You all know the result. The American pianist Van Cliburn took first prize, causing a sensation both in Russia and at home in the United States, where he came back as a hero. But this competition that was intended as a promotion of a country's culture turned into something very different in the end. It caused a thaw in diplomatic relations between the East and West. And at this point, I would like to give the word to Jacques Marquis and tell us a little bit more about that special moment in history. Jacques.
Hi. Then, yes, super. Then the story of Van Cliburn, and the first thing you should do is look at the logo, and if you go on the side, it's VC for Van Cliburn. if you didn't know this before. Then 1958, the Tchaikovsky, and to be a little bit more precise, it's the Cold War between Russia and the US. And it's also the run for the moon, Yuri Gagarin. It's how the Russian can show supremacy on a lot of fields, especially classical music and especially piano. Then suddenly, this young 23 years old coming from Texas, studying with a Russian teacher at Juilliard, came to the competition to compete. And through the competition, get a lot of attention from the audience, but also from the jury members, who are all Russian. At the end, the winner is Van Cliburn, but they had to ask the permission to Khrushchev, the prime minister of that time, in order to give him the first prize. And then they went to see Khrushchev, and they said, do we give him the first prize? He's an American. And the famous quote of Khrushchev is he the best? And they said, yes, he is, therefore, give him the first prize. And Van became instantly a superstar in classical music. And I have the next one. Then a very impactful musician in the first decade after his win, and as mentioned there, did a lot for bridging music through the world with a bridge between Russia and the United States in a period that it was extremely difficult to even talk between these two countries. Next one, please. Next one, please. Yes, then over his years, and he passed in 2013, he met all the presidents and played for them and was a cultural icon. And an important fact also about Van, he never talked about politics. He thought that politics was there for politicians. And his goal was always to bring people together through music. Now the next two slides are two little movies about Van, one that we did recently and the other one who is older, and you'll see that. Next one. Sound. Great. You have to go back. You have to go back. There's a sound with this. The other one, before. There's a nice sound in. Can you hear it? Then this is the ticker tape parade in New York, a few days after winning the Tchaikovsky. He's the only classical musician who got a ticker tape parade, who usually is for football teams or stuff like this. They don't do that anymore. At 23 years old, he did a speech in front of the City Hall about the power of classical music. The mayor of New York. Too bad we don't have the sound. Next one. And this one is a story. No, this is the same one. Next one. Thank you. Talking about cultural diplomacy, in 2022, we had the competition, and on February 24, it was the declaration of war between Russia and Ukraine. On March 9, which is 2 weeks after the first day of war, we had screening auditions live in Fort Worth, and we had 15 Russians and Belarusians coming. And naturally, we had to, at a board meeting, talking about what we're going to do because some competition decided to ban Russian players. The Metropolitan Opera decided to ban Gergiev and Netrebko. Then what the Clyburn will do? They all coming in a week from now. And we had discussion, and I think that in life, having the right things to do and to say when it's not difficult, it's easy. But having the making decision in a tough time define your organization. And then we had many discussions within the organization about, and there were a lot of point of views regarding if we are banning or not banning Russian pianists. And at the end, we came back to Van Cliburn and his vision of helping young musicians to embrace a career, and that music should be shared without any boundaries and any politics. Then we decided to accept the Russian into the competition. And the next slide. And once again, we're missing the sound. I'm so sad. Then this is a picture of the second prize and third prize. Naturally, you remember 2022, the first prize being Yunshan Lim, and the second prize was Anna Genyushine from Russia, and the third prize was Dimitro Choni from Ukraine. And Anna on the stage that night hugged Dimitro. And I said to myself, this is what we do. We give a platform to artists without thinking about politics, but thinking about their unique voices that can be shared and that can be a way of seeing the world going in the future. If we mute young artists, this is not the way to go. We should give them the platform and be respectful of their own choices. And once again, music can bring together the world. Then that was the end of 2022, and since then, we have been promoting this same vision of sharing music with the world through music without any boundaries.
Thank you very much. One question, going back to that very special moment when Van Cliburn won. Why do you think, or what do you think made the Soviet authorities allow this American to win their crown jewel cultural project at the height of the Cold War?
Yes, I was too young then, but the what I've read over some books and all that was that Pushnev wanted to also reach out to the east after Stalin, and Van Cliburn was a very good tool to bridge out through music once again and not political uh, roads to reach out to this. And it was also a choice of the jury. And 9 Russian, or more than that, I think there were 13 Russian jury members decided to vote for him for the first prize, which is a testament, a statement of his talent at that time. But I think that Khrushchev saw that as an opportunity to bridge out the U.S. And actually, it worked pretty well afterwards.
Yes, of course, I agree with all that, but don't you think there was a moment of just overwhelming power of music that really pulled the audience and made the audience so enthusiastic that there was just no going back?
I think you're right. In the story of Van there during the competition, Van was so popular with the audience that they were yelling Vanya, his name, all over the place. And a young competitor who came to the competition in 22 was telling us that Van went to a concert at the Tchaikovsky competition in 2000, I will say 11 or something, and he sat at the balcony. And when the crowd knew that Van was there, he had a standing ovation for 15 minutes, only because it was Van.
Thank you. Yes, that must have been a really incredible moment. Now, at this point, I would like to introduce our second speaker, Professor Kim Sung-gun of Seoul National University in South Korea. He's a personal friend and my predecessor at the Tongyong International Music Festival, and someone who I've always admired for creating and realizing projects that seem seemingly impossible to do. So he will first tell us about a very different kind of project in cultural diplomacy that was held between South Korea and the United States. Please.
Thank you. And I'm very glad to be here. Actually, I'm also the member of the competition since 2006 to, I think, until 2014, Tongyong General Assembly. So I was attend many assemblies like Tel Aviv, also Melbourne. I still remember some of my old colleagues, but I'm very glad to know new colleagues. So I'm sure of where I'm now teaching Seoul National University, which one project just after the Korean War. So now I tell you some history. Next page. So that project called Minnesota Project, which is was begun in 1953, 54, and almost like 60 years. And as you know, that the Korean War was 1950 to 1953, almost 3 years. The war was begun in June. We always remember June 25, 25th, Korean War Day. And the 3 years after, Korea was totally destroyed, and also border, South Korean, North Korean border, since 70 years still exists. It's the same way. And the U.S. Ministry of the Official Assistant, some program, they decide to fully support to the Seoul National University, so rebuilding not only the university or the Korea, or so they try to find the three disciplines: agriculture and medicine and engineering, which not only developed to our university, National University, as well as the Korea. All the system of the medical system became from our Japanese colony time to new American ways, and as well as the kind of engineering, is like many things, such kind of development carries in Korea. So that's why I think the music is also developed as many participants as the winners in your competition. So that's, I think, 6 years, more than 300 Korean scholars studied in Minnesota and across the border, and University of Minnesota support so many things to us. And now we are thinking about, after 70 years, to new project, which is we are still struggling for many difficult times. but with maybe culture and cultivation can be answer for new approach or to dialogue across the border. So next page, please. So since last year, we just started a special small project with Minnesota, new Minnesota, but it's not only we are talking about the state in US, but new circumstance, new uh, infra, internet, and many future possibilities. Can you, next page, please? So we call the new Minnesota project is starting from this year and for future. So I would like to introduce such a kind of new approach with dialogue across the borders. We can through culture and future collaboration and world make much better and beautiful. Thank you very much.
After the Korean War, the Korean Peninsula, as you all know, was divided and still is after more than 70 years. There is a demilitarized zone in between the two countries, and there's virtually no contact whatsoever between the two countries, even though they are, or they were really the same people before the war. And my question to you is, of course, I'm very interested because I never had the opportunity to visit North Korea. You have been there, you have done cultural exchange with North Korea. What does it feel like to bring music to a place like North Korea? What is the reception? How do people react to this?
Well, so my visit to North Korea was, I think, almost 20 years ago. So I remember there is wonderful musicians, and there is the Isangyun Institute, which where I also visited to their performance. We've been as one Korean cellist named Bong In Ko, maybe you know one name, and he played with the North Korean uh, orchestras. But I think the communication with the people with youth is very nice. But we cannot talk about any other things, and there's so I cannot remember the with them. But with music, it's okay. Very
Yeah. So communication is limited only to music.
yes.
There was one very famous cultural exchange project with North Korea, and that was the New York Philharmonic under Lorin Maazel visiting Pyongyang as part of their Asian tour. And it was the same situation for them. The only tool of communication was music. And so my question to you and also to you, Michael, is it, what is the value of this kind of project? After the New York Philharmonic visited there, there was a lot of voices in the press saying there was no meaning behind, there was no real exchange between the people taking place. You only spent a lot of money to have some nice publicity, but did it really touch the people? Did it really create an exchange of people, or did it not? So maybe both of you can, you have experience maybe in a different way with Lucerne Festival Orchestra, but you went to China as well, and I think you can judge about this feeling that you have when the orchestra is on stage. You have an audience that you don't know, that you first of all cannot relate to, and then what happens in that concert.
Well, I think we have to differentiate between the project that took place in Pyongyang with the New York Philharmonic and the Lucerne Festival going to Beijing. Those are two completely different projects, although it's international exchange. I think that for most, what you see without having to prove anything is that in this case, whether it was in Pyongyang or with us in Beijing, although there were different goals behind, there was a common ground. And I think especially when countries are apart, as it's the case with North Korea, South Korea, United States, and it's to see what do we have in common rather than where are we opposed to one another, or who has the better military, or who is more forceful and stronger economically. It's to see what do we have in common. And I think the one thing that the New York Philharmonic Project, and I witnessed it live on CNN, by the way, the one thing it proved that there is common ground. And I think when you try to get closer to other cultures or countries and exchange, you have to first realize and analyze what do we have in common. Maybe we do have culture in common. We have strong talents, I'm sure. There are highly talented musicians and artists in North Korea, just as there are in South Korea, as devoted and dedicated and as eager to perform on international stages. So that's the one thing it proved. Unfortunately, there was no sustainability with the New York Philharmonic Project. They did not go back. There was no exchange project. Of course, with China, there are many exchanges, Chinese orchestras going abroad, Chinese artists going abroad, while European or American artists are coming to China still. And there's so much more common ground between China and the rest of the world. And exchange also with Asia and everybody in so many other countries than there is with North Korea for whatever reason. And I think that is very important in diplomatic culture, is to see what do we have in common and not to start with all the problems or difficulties that may be, but to see how can we start, where do we have common ground to walk upon. And I think that's where culture, music, and whatever really come into play, have their power.
I think that as arts organization, we ask from artists to push their own boundaries all the time. And as arts organization, we should do the same. And projects like this is the idea is to push the boundary. And when you push the boundaries, something will happen. Maybe not right now, but in the future. And I think it's very important that we always identify potential of expanding our role. Arts and music is a great way to connect with people. And without language boundaries and all that, music can do that. And I think this is one of our key factor or key asset of the World Federation, of the many competitions that we do, is to make sure that we communicate through music and through our work with other nations. And as long as we do that and we push our own boundaries, I think we'll make the world better a little bit, step by step.
If you look at, once again, if you look at orchestras visiting China, the first one was the Philadelphia Orchestra in 1973, and that exchange happened as part of the so-called ping pong diplomacy, where sports ping pong players were involved in the first place, and that extended to orchestras. Now, Philadelphia is maybe the orchestra that has visited most times of all of them, and the most recent visit was just last year. But there were also others, really major orchestras in the early days, including the Vienna Philharmonic in 1977 with Carlo Maria Giulini, and the Berlin Phil with Herbert von Karajan in 1979. They all brought European, Western music to China and made, in a way, that recreated an enthusiasm among the Chinese orchestras. They brought Western composers, classical composers, first of all, Beethoven actually, to China, and this music, these composers became part of the Chinese classical music culture. So I think the feeling from our side in visiting China over the years would have changed dramatically from 1973 to right now. And my question to you is, how has your impression changed? You've visited China many times with and also without the Lucerne Festival Orchestra. The reception of the music, the kind of exchange, the kind of interaction between people, has it changed, and how has it changed?
Well, I think change is the wrong word. It has grown, growth. There's been a tremendous growth of appreciation for, in this case, classical music over the past 30, 40 years in China. And believe me, I was here the first time, I think 40 years ago, and there's really such a huge difference in the amount of appreciation, of understanding. You have very young audiences here, mostly, and which we are dreaming about in Europe and other places in the world. And it's growing and growing and growing. And I think really music is the one strong common ground, as I said before, that we have to walk upon, and things will improve. Um, so I think that's one world that we share, where we're so close to one another, even though we have different cultures, even we have different political systems and different economies and whatnot. But that's the one thing we have. And the stronger we walk on this road, the better we are in others too. That's, I would say, a little bit my philosophy. So I think it's probably not the worst philosophy.
There is one other orchestra that I would like to mention at this point, because this is true cultural diplomacy, and that is the Divan Orchestra, an orchestra comprised of Israeli, Palestinian, and other musicians, where music and performing together is also used as a means of communication. Now, the Divan Orchestra has performed in Lucerne 4 times, I think, earliest, many more times. So you have a lot of experience with them. Maybe you can comment on this a little bit, what your feelings were when you saw these musicians playing together.
Well, Daniel Barenboim was the music director of the orchestra, and Edwam Said, who was a very famous philosopher, Palestinian philosopher living in New York. They had created this philosophy of the West Eastern Divan, and it's an amazing orchestra. I mean, the fact is that you have Jordanian, Israeli, Lebanese, Iranian, Iranian musicians working in this orchestra. Of course, not all of them live in their countries, because it's too difficult for them. But you do have quite a few who are either in Israel or Jordan or Lebanon, and they sometimes have to undertake very, very difficult travel in order to get to the orchestra, which is based in different parts, rehearses in different parts of Europe. Barenboim and Said, through also very intensive workshops, education, have really achieved a miracle. And I think you can just use that name of miracle in terms of this orchestra. Of course, there are people saying, well, I mean, they're not living there anymore. The orchestra has never performed in Israel or in an Arab country, really, although they have once performed in the Gaza. But the fact is that these musicians work together. They do not have a problem playing with one another. Yet they have a common goal to strive for excellence in performance. And Barenboim was always a champion of saying, and he is a champion of saying, this is not a political project, it is an artistic project. I want to create one of the best orchestras in the world. And that has brought them together. Their goal was not to get along better with their different backgrounds, but their goal was to become the best in one together. And I think, although this is philosophical, and although if we look at the newspapers these days, this may be proven wrong completely, no, it is not. Human beings are capable of much more than we read in the papers today, I'm convinced.
Sungun, another question about North Korea, because this is, in a way, a similar situation. In South Korea, the aim was for a long time to create an orchestra with people playing together from both sides of the country, but it never really happened. On the other hand, Western musicians went to North Korea, and a few times North Korean musicians also visited Europe in some not so well noticed, but nevertheless very important projects. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, as far as I remember, there are two approach played together, but it's never happened as far as I know. But in Europe, there was an Isangyun orchestra in Pyongyang. Did it and played, but it's only they played their music. And I think in North Korea and South Korea, we have uh, almost no contact after 70 years. So when I'm thinking about such kind of exchanges and play together, also in South Korea we are thinking about it with Arirang, which is the very famous Korean folk song. When we sing Arirang and we became together, so it's still I don't know when will be realized with the orchestra together played wonderful music. But I think also even though kind of sing something together, we feel the Korea still, I don't know exactly what will happen.
Jacques, a question to you. You live in a country where every second word is highly politicized. As the chief executive of a music competition, how do you make sure that you don't get involved in a conflict, that in a spiraling conflict that you cannot get out anymore? How do you make sure that artists stay true to themselves, that they can perform in a safe and in a truly artistic environment without being abused for political purposes?
Um, in 22, when that happened, the New York Times called me, and the journalist said, "And how are you navigating through politics?" And my answer was, "We're not navigating through politics. We're above that, because our goal is to give a platform once again to excellence, and excellence coming from China, from South Korea, from US is excellence. And this is the message of the organization itself. We want to give a voice or a platform to talent, despite anything else. And when the debate is brought to you to the floor level, you elevate the debate and say, no, we're there for reaching the sky with music and with what I said before, having across all boundaries without limits. And I think excellence is the answer in our world when we talk about, when people want to talk about politics, we get away as fast as we can.
It's actually very, very nice to hear that. And I think it's significant that especially in this year of division between between China and the United States, where so many problems arise, that you can have a Hong Kong Chinese winner in the competition and really celebrate him for his artistic achievements in a very wonderful way.
And you know our two first prizes, Hong Kong, China, Aristo from, yeah, and the second prize, it's Vitaly Sterikov, Israel and Russia. And the third one is an American. And in everything after the competition that happened, I had no question about politics. I had only questioned about artistry, which is perfect.
I found it also quite significant that the city of Harbin last year erected a statue of Alice and Eleanor Schoenfield. We will see this in the afternoon, right in front of the concert hall. So last year, in the middle of all these tensions, they are building a statue of two American artists in the city of Harbin. I thought that was extraordinary. And it was wonderful to see how we are only talking about art and not about politics at all. Do you also have situations in the festival where you get into difficulties because you are showcasing diversity and you feel that diversity gets to certain limits and you have problems promoting it and having problems people accepting this diversity you have in the festival?
Well, we don't really have opposition to that, but I can see that part of the audience maybe and of you know in the society have a problem with it sometimes. I think that in the arts we have a mission, and that is to broaden our audiences. And I always have to just I'm frustrated when I see that on the one hand we're talking about new audiences, building audiences. Who can we invite? How do we do it with the schools and artificial intelligence and so on? Whereby we completely exclude certain parts of society or don't address it. And so we had a theme of diversity in 22. It was not, I didn't not see it as a political theme, but some did. But I refuse to let myself be defined by political parties in Switzerland or anywhere else. I work for culture, I work for the arts, and I think our mission and our goal is to bring society together, not in a political way, but in a human, societal way. And for me, a difficulty is a challenge, and a challenge I want to overcome. And we did, and we found new audiences, even among people of color in Switzerland. We stepped ahead and we found new audiences. And I think this is our mission and our goal wherever we work. But it's, for me, not a political project.
In this context in the festival, you were featuring the Chiniki Orchestra. And as we will be speaking in the Federation in our general meeting later on about this kind of diversity, maybe you could say just a few words about this orchestra and what effect it had, what reaction it caused in the city, in the audience.
Yeah, Chiniki is an orchestra, or it's an organization that is dedicated to people of color. It's based in London, where you have a lot of issues, a lot of complexity, situations with migration and so on, and which is growing in Switzerland as well. And we invited Chiniki twice in 22 to open and to end the festival. So that was quite a statement. And at first, people didn't really know what to do with it. They were surprised, but at the end, there were standing ovations. So we made an achievement, and I know it's coming back also next year, from what I've heard. And so I think it's become a part of the Lucerne Festival as much as the West Eastern Divan Orchestra and all the other great orchestras.
Thank you. Before we open the floor to your questions, I would like to tell one story of one person here in Harbin that I think is very worth mentioning, as he really became a cultural ambassador of the city. I'm talking, of course, about Helmut Stern, a Jewish German violinist born 1928 in Berlin. He was 11 years old when his family, his Jewish family, had to emigrate during the Hitler regime, and they were trying desperately to get to Palestine, to get to a safe place, but they couldn't. And in the end, the only country that gave them refugee was China. So they ended up on a boat from Europe uh, through the Suez Canal, around India, around Eastern Asia, came to Shanghai, and in the end landed, in the end arrived here in the city of Harbin, where they lived for 11 years. These 11 years were among the hardest I've ever heard about. It was the war years. They were in poverty. The climate in the city in the winter can be extremely harsh, but they survived. And after the war, after 11 years here in Harbin, they finally got the chance to emigrate. They went to Israel. Now, Stern is a famous musician's name, and Helmut Stern was lucky enough to, in Tel Aviv, meet his namesake, Isaac Stern, who in turn helped him to become a member of the Israel Philharmonic. He worked in this orchestra for several years, then briefly went to the United States and came back to his native Germany in 1961. He was one of the people who initiated the first tour of the Berlin Philharmonic to Israel. And also, he was instrumental in bringing the Berlin Philharmonic to China in 1979. After coming back to China, after coming back to Harbin, he helped countless Chinese, helped to foster the cultural exchange between Europe and China, between Berlin and Harbin. And he became a true cosmopolitan, a true symbol of cultural diplomacy. When you visit the concert hall, when you visit the other places in the city, you will find his picture on the wall, and I think it's really an amazing story. I forgot the most important thing. He came to Germany. He became part of the Berlin Philharmonic. That was the end of the story. Well, I'm sorry. Helmut Stern came from Germany, came to China, went to Palestine, and finally ended up back in Germany, in Berlin, and became a member of the Berlin Philharmonic, and as such brought Berlin Philharmonic back to China. He was assistant concertmaster for many years, and he died 5 years ago. But as I said, you can find his picture, his name, in several places here in the city, and he's being held very dear by the Harbin people. Let's finish it at that, and I would like to invite your questions to the panel. Do we have any questions? Do we have any microphones, please? No questions, audience? Maybe then I can ask the question to you, and actually this first question goes to you, Pavy. Another kind of cultural diplomacy has to do with national composers who serve as a kind of country branding. And you know where this is leading. You have a national composer, John Sibelius, who stands for your country's culture and who really stands for the spirit and character of Finland. How is that, this brand of a country, how is this character, this serving your country in a positive way? How do you connect, how do you interact between Finland and other countries through the music of John Sibelius?
Well, thank you for the difficult question. I would say I would quote Esa-Pekka Salonen when in one interview he said that we Finns probably don't realize the importance or the substance of Sibelius music because we're like a fish doesn't understand swimming in water. So we are so much surrounded by Sibelius music, and but it has very important role in our I think identity, and because of, let's say, about Finlandia, this piece Finlandia, which became a symbol of our independence. So that's one thing, but still I think it's for modern people and young people, they also appreciated very highly the music of Sibelius. So if you could identify Finns, they're saying Sibelius, sauna, and sisu. So it's Sibelius, sauna, and perseverance. Okay. So, but when it comes to connecting other people, I think it you can understand Sibelius music. I would say in 3 levels. The one is very universal. So it's like every one of you said that music can combine people and then I would go one layer inside, and then it's national. And then I would go to the smallest inside layer. I think it can be very personal, no matter where it's from. It can be very personal for own people. So actually, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but maybe rather describing, I think, the layers and how music can be understood. Like, I know that Sibelius is very famous in Japan. Somehow, there's many maybe undescribable nuances how it can unite people.
Thank you. Any questions? Would you like to comment? Everybody's getting hungry. I have a question for you, Elisabeth. The Munich competition was founded right after the Second World War, and it was an extraordinary project because not unlike Korea, the country was basically destroyed. There was no infrastructure, and there was, of course, no money for culture. But nevertheless, the government decided to create this multi-instrument, multi-category competition that today has become one of the most comprehensive competitions because it has so many different instruments and disciplines. What was the idea behind this competition? And maybe you can tell us a story from the early days. What impact did it have when the competition was first held?
I have to take the words of Jacques. I was very young then at that time. But I think there was 2 most important things. The first one was practical. In the first years after the war, the first orchestras has been built, and there were no musicians so the competition was looking for musicians for the orchestra in whole Germany. And the second point, I think, I hope, was the thing we will again contact with the world. We will go to the music to be again a part, a positive part of the world. And it's an interesting thing. This year after the war, Germany was this quite a banned nationality. And still, in the first competitions, there were international participants. There were a lot of American, then came the Japanese, then depending on the political situation in the world, in the opening of the following country, there was Russian, Polish people, the whole Europe, then Asian nationalities, and now we just have participants from all over the world, and this is still binding and building contacts. This is one of the most important things for us.
Thank you. Maybe one last question or one last competition I would like to mention before we go to lunch. One that I have a, how should I say, a little bit personal relation to, because my teacher, János Starker, Hungarian, who lived in the United States for the longest part of his life, he grew up behind the Iron Curtain in Budapest, and there is one competition that enabled him to move to the West and to pursue his career in the West, and that was Geneva. He won the competition. He won a bronze medal at the competition in 1946, I believe. And with this, he took his cello. He went to Switzerland. He had not seen such a beautiful country in a long time. He saw the mountains and the lakes. He played some beautiful music. He took his cello and he just decided to stay there or to move on. He went to France, and from France he went to America. But he was not the only one. There were quite a lot of artists that performed around those early days of the Geneva competition. So maybe Didier, you could just tell us a little bit about these origins of the competition and what the competition meant in terms of cultural diplomacy at that time.
Yes, thank you, Florian, for memories. Of course, I was not there, but what I've written in the books, yes, the Geneva competition started in 1939, just before the Second World War, and they decided, like Switzerland was a neutral country and was not in war with, unlike the rest of Europe. So it was a peaceful country at the time, and they decided to continue the competition every year from 1940 to 1946 as a national competition. But national not only for the Swiss people, but for every musician who lived in Switzerland at that time. And that included people like János Starker, but also like Georg Scholti, for instance. At that time, Scholti was a pianist from Hungary as well, and he was a refugee in Switzerland. And I know because I was told by his wife that for him, being in Switzerland and winning a prize in the Geneva competition was something very special, because thanks to this, he could live in Switzerland as an artist for many years, and that helped him to become the great artist we know after the war. So it was very important at that time, and it sounds like something representative from the Swiss embassy told before. It was the spirit of Switzerland to be a welcome country and to be a bridge between uh, everybody in the world, like the spirit of diplomacy. So this is part of our competition, and it continued after war. And of course, after the Second World War, the Geneva competition was able to continue his work as an international competition. But you know, it was not without the same kind of problems that we have nowadays. I remember in the books of my board, um, big discussions during the 50s and the 60s, and do we accept Russian musicians in our competitions? At that time, during the Cold War, it was really an issue for people, even for Swiss people. Do we accept Russian musicians? Because they knew that the Russian musicians were very good. Maybe they could win the competition, but do we allow people from the East countries and from the Soviet Union to win a prize in Geneva? So at the end, they accepted, of course, but it was an issue. Um, it is still an issue, and we have the same discussion as Jacques mentioned after the 22 invasions of Ukraine, and we decided to follow the advice of the federation to accept everybody. But there were again the same discussion: do we accept exceptions due to political reasons or not? And I think very healthy and wise to stay, like Jack said, uh, above the political dispute of this world. It's not easy sometimes, but we try to continue our mission in that way.
Thank you very much. I think it's time for lunch. I would like to thank very much our panelists in the first session. Very much. Have some small presents for you. We will meet again at 1:30 for the second session, and lunch is now being served in the Café Song, the breakfast restaurant, for everyone. So have a nice lunch break and see you soon. We will try and move you all a little bit closer here for the afternoon. I understand it's hard to understand the amplified voices, but we'll try and improve a little bit in the afternoon. Thank you very much.